Hi there, if you want to learn how to create sound effects, then you are in the right place. In this video, I want to show you my workflow for taking a recording sound and bringing it all the way to a usable sound in as short a time as possible. All right, so here I have my recorder of choice. This is the Sony D100 Field Recorder. And you can see here I have my microphone set in an XY pattern. That is when they're facing each other at a 90-degree angle. And this is the best kind of position for a strong center stereo sound. So if you want to have a strong center image while still having a stereo sound, this is usually the way to go for most sound effects. Now, if you're not using this, you're probably just going to be using a shotgun microphone and recording mono. So 90% of the time, you're either going to be using this XY or a shotgun microphone. Because I'm using this, I can't plug in any microphone. This doesn't have any XLRs or anything on the sides, so I can't do that, but I am going to be using XY. Another option that you could do here, depending on what you're recording, is going AB, and this is good for like a fake mono sound. So for example, if I'm recording footsteps, I've used this for recording footsteps. Now you can also do a wide angle sound like this, and this is great for ambiances or any kind of sound where it's important to capture how the sound is traveling or changing in the stereo field. So for example, birds flying overhead, car pass-bys, anything like that, any sound that is changing in the stereo field, this is a great option for that. But like I said, for now, most of the time, I'm just going to be using XY, so that's what I'm going to do. So right now, I'm just going to put on my wind muff here, and then we're going to go and record some sounds. All right, so now that we've had our recording, the first thing I like to do here is bring it into RX, which you can see here. And you can see I was a little bit too hot on some of the hits here. You can see here I'm peaking quite a bit here. This is only a 24-bit recording, so I can't actually save that, but I did have a limiter on, so it shouldn't sound too bad. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is put on an EQ, and this is a low cut EQ. I just wanna cut some of the lows below. Here I'm doing 90 hertz, sorry, just to cut out that, as you can see here, that little there's kind of like no information down there, and you have for some reason you have a lot of volume there. So I'm just going to cut that out. Okay, once I have that, I'm just going to cut out anything that I'm from the beginning here that I don't need, like me talking, stuff like that, especially back here. Right, just me cleaning up or doing whatever. I don't need all that. So then once I have that, right, I can hear that I have some decent recordings here. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to normalize everything. After that, I personally like to kind of keep mine as raw as possible. I could compress it if I want to because they're pretty big transients. So if I really, really wanted to, I could do that. And what I would do is either do some compression, or I could also do something with a limiter here and just do some really light limiting here. So I'm just going to render that so we can see what it's going to do. So you can see here, everything's kind of being pushed up a little bit, and that's it. So not too much is changing here, just kind of briefing up the volume. Now, I kind of want to keep it that way because I'm going to add my effects in my DAW once I have that done. So right now, I'm just going to export it, and then we'll go into Reaper and start designing from there. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper, and here's our kind of edited raw file. Like I said, barely any kind of processing on there, just a little bit of low cut EQ and a bit of normalization just to boost, and that's it. So now what I'd like to do is either, I'll see if I can do dynamic split, which is for some reason not working. So I'm just gonna manually go through this and kind of split out the sounds that I want, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I've cut up everything. Now what I like to do is I like to order them by length so I can see what they look like in terms of length. I normally like to grab like the longest ones here and kind of just bring them in because I already know they're kind of going to be a little bit too long here. So maybe something like this is fine. Right, and I'm just going to do some light, fade in, fade out, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy here, nothing complex. Again, I'm trying to keep it simple because I want to do most of my processing, most of my editing in the actual design phase. So right now, this is just my editing phase. Try to keep them as raw and clean as possible, and then we'll do that more of the processing in the design stage. So right now, I'm just going to export these. I'm going to put these in a new folder. That's important for this kind of workflow that I'm doing right now. So they're all going to go into a new workflow, a new folder, sorry, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. All right, now if you want, you could skip this section here that I'm going to show you, but a lot of times I like to just go in here and do some further tweaking and just have an actual listen to the sound files and see what I've actually exported. You know, like maybe depending on what I'm designing, I might not want that for this kind of impact sound. So like to me, that sounds good. So I think because I wasn't super clean in my DAW, again, you could do this in your DAW. I personally like to do it in RX just because I can see specific frequency detail and yeah, more information about the actual sound that I'm doing. So that's why I like to do it inside of RX here. So I'm going to do that for all of the sounds. Again, re-export them. It's a bit longer, but I find I have more control over the final result. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll go back into RX, and then I'll show you the processing and how you can start to get usable sounds really quickly. All right, so here I am back inside of Reaper, and what I like to do now is to start layering my sounds together. Now you can do this manually, but I'm gonna do it a little bit quicker by using MVK Create. All right, so here you go. So I have access now to my sounds with this search here. And what I'm gonna do here is I don't like to do too many layers. 2 to 3 is good, especially when you're starting off with really raw sounds. You don't wanna do too much to start. That's been my experience anyways. I'm gonna bring the offset again, not too much again to start. I kind of tend to increase the offset, increase the number of items and length and pitch, etc. as I'm further down in the processing line, as I sample and resample sounds. But for now, because this is our first one, I'm just gonna keep it simple. 3 layers, 0.1 offset, 9 pitch, so 9 cents for the pitch. Only gonna go up or down 9 by 9 cents. So I'm just gonna do that really quick. That's gonna generate really quickly for me. Like I said, you don't need to use this. You can use, you can just do manually if you want. I like to do this because it's so much faster. All right, once I have that, now I have some sounds that I could use if I wanted to. So here we go. So I really like these kind of the textured crunchy sounds. Now, one of the things that I personally like to do to make sure that these sounds are very good and usable and are not going to get tiring to listen to is I'd like to put them through some sort of variation. So you can use MVK. I'm using MVK variation. You can also use something like LKC variator to create different variations. This is a lot faster. So I already have a preset here that I like to use, and I'm just going to listen to them and see if I get tired of listening to the same sounds over and over again. All right, so it's pretty good, but one thing that I do notice now that I've listened through that is that there is a clicky sound in one of the samples somewhere. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna see if I can find it. It's right here. It's this sample right here. So I'm just gonna cut that out. Okay, it's getting a little bit challenging to fix that one. So I know for now, it's not worth my time to try to go and edit it and make it all perfect. So I'm just gonna skip it and go to the next one, right? Okay, let's say I like this one. Now, another thing that I personally like to do here is because I'm gonna create variation to get even more out of my variations. There's a few things I'm going to do. First, on the master bus here, on the group bus, I'm just going to make sure to have a bit of OTT. This is just to boost up the sound a little bit, and I'm going to make sure to have my limiter on here. I just have it set to -1 to make sure it doesn't peak, and that's it. It's just to make sure nothing peaks and it never pokes out. Here, I like to keep this down pretty low, around 20, and you can see I have upward and downward at 0%. So that is all I have on the master group bus. But now on here, on each individual track, I like to add some sort of effect. So right here, I'm adding a bit of shaper distortion. It's very light, and I'll show you the details of it soon. So here I'm doing bass lane, and here maybe I'll do, I have another one that I like here. Uber loud 20%. Okay, so on here, you can see here, I have different settings. For example, for this bottom sound here, for this bottom track, there's always going to be about 20% boosted here and 15 for the highs. For this one here, I have bass lane. So here you can see I'm boosting the frequency at 2.5 a little bit. And then here for the kilohertz shaper here, the mix is at 50. I like to even bring down a little bit more because I don't want it to distort too much like that. So now, like the sound is still there. It still sounds good. So if I take everything off, It just boosts it a little bit. Really, it's not that noticeable. But when it does become noticeable is once you start using MVK variation here. And here you can see I have 20 variations. I'm changing the pitch, I'm changing the offset just a little bit. And what I'm actually doing here, why it's important that I added these effects here is because I'm changing the track. So I'm making sure that 75% of the time, the items are going to a new track. So that means a new effect is gonna be applied to them, right? So they're never gonna be applied the same effect. The effect is gonna apply to the different layers each and every time. So that's gonna add even more variation and change to our sound. And we also have an EQ here to change the tone. So now if I play it, right, it sounds great to me. Now there's a little thing that I personally don't want is the ending here. Right there for that one. So I'm just gonna cut that out a little bit like that. Right, and now I can just go right back there, hit it. I can change the offset here because I find some of them are a bit too much, but you get the idea. I can hit apply to here, and now I have sounds that I know they're not going to be tiring to listen to over and over again as I put them in a project. I can use different variation, swap them in, and they're just really easy to use. So I've used this for impacts. I've used this for swings, whooshes. You can use this for whatever UI sounds, sci-fi sounds. It doesn't really matter because the kind of the technique and the way that you're doing this is always going to be creating new sounds based on the layers that you have here. So this is a really great way to build out game audio assets really quickly and to have them usable in a project. All right, I hope you found that useful and valuable. This is the workflow that I use, especially when I'm creating sounds that are more complex and need a lot of different layers. This is how I build out each of the individual layers, right? So that then I can get a lot of material going as quickly as possible to then create those more complex layers that can just bring into my DAW and start designing that way. So anyways, I hope you liked it and start using it in your designs if it's useful for you. If you have any comments, questions, leave it down below. And I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.